Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. I was just laughing at myself and my adjustment and trying to take my thumbnail without having the glare reflect off my glasses. It does. What is it? It gets my attention. It really does. Distract. That's the word I was looking for. It does distract me in my conversation because I'm trying to look at the camera as if I'm sitting here having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with you. And all I see is those fly eyes. And it just makes me laugh, right? But we adapt, we conquer. Today, the thought to take a look at what kind of better lighting I could put into effect. It came into my mind a couple of times and just left my mind just as fast as it came to my attention. But maybe tomorrow we'll work on that. It is the end of the week. It is even the end of my week because on the norm, Saturdays is a day that I take off for myself. And for tomorrow, I was just kind of thinking, what do I want to do? I went outside for a little bit today. I had to get some groceries and get those cupboards restocked for the next little while. But the smell of fall was so amazing. I think that the weather was pretty similar here in Manitoba to what it was like in Ontario. And I think if I had stayed another week, these amazing, I don't know. Well, you guys know, you know what the smell of fall is like. It's just amazing. And especially if you can get into some real wooded areas where the mushrooms are growing. Right now, they would be starting their rot. They would be starting their dieback, and the smell would be absolutely incredible. Tomorrow, Saturday, I kind of dedicated that we were going to get in and do some editing. But because I was out a little bit today, I thought, oh my goodness, it would sure be nice to get outside a little bit tomorrow. I thought even tonight maybe I would go for a walk just to get a cup of coffee or something, but I just couldn't fit it into the timings, knowing that, right, I had committed to be here at 9 o'clock, and I certainly don't want to be out late at night, right, in the streets. I would stay on the main drags. I would be perfectly safe. But you know what? Sometimes we always think that we're going to be safe and we put our trust in others, right? We put our trust in circumstances and in infrastructure, and it fails us all the time. Just even tripping on a uneven sidewalk or something at night. And these were things I never paid any attentions to up until recently. My own safety. I remember even in my 50s, 4 o'clock in the morning, walking to the convenience store to 7-Eleven down back alleys. And I didn't live in the most desirable neighborhood. I didn't live in a bad neighborhood. We were a community there, but we live in a world that's a little bit different. We live in a world full of broken empaths and failed narcissists and borderlines, and we have these souls that are trying to come to the surface, and they come to the surface and they freak right out, right? And then they just crash, in something that they're trying to do. And, one of the things I'm trying to do is just to make that crash not a crash, right? Because we all have issues emotionally, mentally, but for a lot of times, well, for most of the time, for most of my life, I kept those affairs to myself. It's how I got addicted to gambling machines. And that was just to fill up space in my life, in my broken life, right? And in some ways, I believe that we're all broken, but because we don't want to look weak. A good example of that, I'm going to use my ex husband as the example of that. He was the most amazing guy ever. But he was in the military, and he did a couple of tours, and, I was new. I got pulled into that family, that military family. I got pulled into it, and I slowly drew my way from kind of the civilian life. And I loved it. I loved the community. I loved the feeling of belonging and actually being included. But I was kind of naive, right? I had heard of shell shock, but I just heard of it in just passing conversation. I didn't know the actual terminology was post traumatic stress disorder, and it happened to be something that my husband got. But, remember what I said, we're not talking about these issues. And especially in the military, the men are not supposed to show signs of weaknesses, admit that they have problems and they have these issues and they keep it within inside of them. And, I actually seen some really amazing, amazing men. I could say women, but I don't remember the women that were in the military having those kind of problems. Maybe marital problems, but not actual depressive or anxiety or crazy, crazy hypervigilance. Like absolutely crazy, like to jump at any sound or anything that was not expected. And it's just to show, that men are trained, like even from little boys, in growing up. And a lot of these little boys don't even have men in their lives, right? Because their mothers are raising them, and they learn to be the man of the house. They learn to be the strong one, the one that's going to take care of everybody. And even if they do have dads, they're brought up to be men. They're brought up to be strong and insensitive. And I believe our male population, a big part of the narcissism issue is exactly that, is because there is no balance in the family units in that, right? That you have a mother going to work, trying to put a roof over the head, and you got the kids with their video games and their television, right? Playing babysitter. And it's something that started even when I grew up in the 70s. My mother worked in hospitals, and my father was a commercial fisherman. He was gone all the time for months at a time, and he'd do that a few times a year. He was gone more than what he was at home. When he was at home, amazing, right? And that's another story in itself. But he wasn't home a lot. And my mother ran that house, but when she was working full time, right, just as hard as my dad to keep that roof over our head, right? That well, the TV, video games hadn't been invented yet. I think it was in early '80s. I think that my dad got the first Nintendo. My dad was king of technology. He loved it all, the old Pioneer 6 foot high speakers and all these big machines with all the dials going on. Even our television looked like something out of 2001 Space Odyssey. And that's like the 70s when it didn't even have a remote control, right? And something right out of the Jetsons. And that's the way he loved to live his life. He loved kind of delving into technology and into innovation. And I think, that bug that he had is something that possibly might have rubbed off on me a little bit. My nephew has it. Oh my goodness. My nephew built me my first computer. I think he was, how old was he? 10 years old, 8 or 10 years old. And my nephew built me my first computer. He's well into his 20s now, but right, my very first computer. I thought that was so cool, right? It was an indication that my family is moving forward, because not just in my generation, but the next generation, right, coming to the surface is contributing massively when it comes to their noggins and what they have to offer. And that's my nephew, and he's on his own journey, right? Totally different from what I'm doing, but at the same time, he's making some incredible, super smart. Like everybody in my family, I would have to say, is super smart, super intelligent, but very casual, very layman's, and all of us have had unique lives and lots of adventures, but adventures that each one of us individually like. You would never catch my sisters, maybe my sister Alice, right? A little bit. She loves the outdoors too. Um, but for the most part, you would never catch my sisters or anybody in my family doing what I do. I'm supposed to be tomorrow editing, putting up content, not on my YouTube channel, but putting content into my editing program. I'm going to start editing the next provincial park that I visited, and it's going to be a big one. I was there for 3 days, and after the little bit of a fiasco that I had last year in losing my storage and trying to delete things so that I could make some space, and then deleting all the footage of the whole week, and then right coming back into the city and putting that because everybody's waiting for my adventures, and I had to go hunting, and I had to experiment in how to get some of my content back and stuff. That was right. So this year, right, we learn from our mistakes. It's in the repetitiveness of making these mistakes and having these failures in our life that we learn to get better at it. So this year, I was making a point that I was going to have lots of footage, lots of storage, and I had no problem in that. But I did destroy one of my power packs. It would have been nice to have one extra power pack to make sure that I had power in my cameras whenever I wanted to go out. But maybe that was just an indication that I had more than enough, more than enough footage, because yeah, that was something. 3 days. So that one might be 2 videos. I haven't gone through the content yet. That's the fun part, right? Because it's not fun. Um, um, what do you call that? Kodaking your footage into a working package so that you can edit it. And if I have that much footage, and I had a lot of footage in the last one too, right? But I have to go through absolutely everything. It's going to take me a while. So tomorrow I'm going to get it started. At very least, I want to commit to make sure that all the frames, all the clips that I want are up there and ready to be right downloaded into my editing program, and I'll probably get to work on that a little bit on Sunday. I I did commit to make sure that each Wednesday that will be my upload day. I've already uploaded Blue Lake. If you want to go in and right take a gander at it and kind of keep me company, right? Because that's what you're doing. Because when I was filming it, when I was filming my holiday, I always kept everybody right in my brand in mind, and I kind of took everybody along wherever I went. And I love my monopod. I'm so happy that I bought that. And I've had that, oh my goodness, ever since I started on YouTube. I've had it for over 10 years. And I don't see other creators using the monopod. I always see them using the little handhelds and the stabilizers, and even using their hands, because the cameras have such great strict stabilization already that you don't have to worry about all of this when you're filming with the cameras, especially with the pixels. Like, I am such a Google girl, and I love the Pixel camera, and only because it is such a great camera. I was saying on one of my live shows that Eminem actually had his music video Venom filmed with a Pixel. Remember that song up on the Empire State Building? They filmed that entire music video with a Pixel. So that was my ambition, and I think they're reasonably comparable in price with the other phones and cameras. They're always advertising, right, for me to switch. I'm not switching. Like I said, I'm a Google girl, and I will stay with the Pixel. But you guys can let me know what you think of the footage. I set the settings, and I just let the camera. I just stick it into manual, and the camera takes everything else. And it's AI intelligence. My editing program is so easy. It's made so easy because of these little programs that I use, like the Kodak, and right. And it's just a matter of Googling your questions when you get into a kind of a barrier, if you come up with a wall or something, and then you just break through that. But in that process, you learn something, right? So even this year, I wasn't looking forward to editing, but once I got all my footage all converted, I went ahead and I said, okay, let's start this. It's going to take me forever to get it done. And I pretty much got the whole thing done roughly, right? You still have to go in and do the polishing and the transitions and the titles and stuff, but one day, right? One day. And I remember how much I struggled even last year. And I've had this program now. I was taking a look at the date. It was 2023. So it's 2025 now. So I've had this program at least 2.5 years, 3 years, right? And this year I did a little bit better because I remembered the lessons and all those frustrations, and oh, give it one more try, and oh my goodness, I got it. And then come in and have to a year later to, right? It's the Ontario Provincial Park Tours. I do them every year, and then go into my program, and I'm thinking it's going to take all day to do. And I just picked up where I left off. I was so pleased with myself that I was actually paying attention. And it's because you don't want to make that extra work for yourself, right? If you're going to learn it, you learn it right, right? You learn it right. And it's not about being a perfectionist, far, far from it, right? Far from it. But to be able to put something together that somebody else might want to, right, hang out with me for a little while, because that's my intent, right? Because that's my evidence. These are trips that somebody like me would normally not be able to take, but it's something that I give to myself, and in giving that to myself, I know I have to set the goal and move towards it, and that it always works out for me. This was the best, and it was not without its faults, believe me, right? That's the thing about Mother Nature. You're going in, you're actually physically surviving. Yes, it's a provincial park, but you're cutting your kindling, you're making your dinner on camp stoves, you're walking down trails that you've never, and I almost got lost a couple of times, right? When they looked like trails and they weren't actually trails. But that's the fun of it, right? It's just being pulled into something that's going to build resilience, kind of a survivor kind of thing. And it's not like I'm doing it to punish myself, but the thing is, my other parts of me want to come to the surface so badly, right? And that opportunity seems to arise when I'm off, right? Doing things on my own in Mother Nature. And that's exactly what happened. It happens every single year. Like I said, it's the end of my fiscal year, September, and it's when I start new goals. I've already written down my list. I haven't expressed them to my audience yet of what they are. I just kind of want to take the small things and take some of care of some of those small things this month if I can, and then I'll share the list because they should be big things. They shouldn't be the little things. The little things are necessities too, and sometimes the little things are the building blocks or the actual foundation of something bigger that you want to work on, and that's the truth too, right? But it all works out in the end. It really does, right? But using my husband as an example, he was he was groomed to be the tough guy, right? He was not going to show his emotions, and he wasn't going to admit that he had any issues. I'm just grateful that they were discovered or they were noticed, and right, and he got the help that he needed. And but that is a big problem as an example, and that's a little bit more extreme because not everybody is in the military and going to have those kind of hairy scary experiences, but there are ambulance drivers and paramedics and emergency room workers and surgeons, and like there's so many careers out there that put us in those situations that can, right? And we're expected, especially the men, right, to be the tough guys, to have it all put together. Nothing bothers us, and that's not a truth, and that causes a lot of issues, right? Because if we can't express it, right, because it's in the talking, the crying, and the time that we get over the problems and the heartbreaks and the grief, and even in the frustration. I know we don't want to listen to others' gripes about that, but we have to, as good neighbors, good friends, good family members, to at very least be a shoulder that somebody can lean on, right? Even if it's just to shed a few tears, whether you're a man or a woman. Okay, I'm kind of babbling off right here. It is Friday. I normally don't have an agenda in the conversation when I first come in, knowing that I'm going to pull a card. The title of my podcast is always the card that I pull. And sometimes, I can't tie the word to the conversation that I've been having for the past half an hour, right? And sometimes that's just how that works. But lots of times it does. And those are the little miracles and little gifts and the little, oh my goodness, isn't that cool? Right? That comes from, and that can be evidence too for somebody else, right? And yeah, so it's a matter of us just being able to stay soft, right? And we live in that world that's so tough and expect us to be tough too. And we're not there yet, right? and we're tough in different timelines, right? In this world's evolution. I mean, we're not cavemen anymore. We're not like we're not like gladiators and warriors and cavalry, right? We're not that anymore, but we're evolving into something better. But that something better calls for us, I think, to soften a little bit. I think the world is softening in itself so that we can soften, so that we don't have to be so hyper vigilant, right, in our lives and be so jumpy, right, to absolutely everything. Because, right, what kind of life is that, right? What kind of life? I think we were all meant here to have amazing experiences, right? And we are. And sometimes it's in our choices, like going down back lanes at 4 o'clock in the morning, that gets us into these situations, right? Sometimes it's just not having a voice, or thinking that you have a permission to have a voice, like my husband did, when he had some issues, when he came out of his tours, right? I think he did Croatia, and he did somewhere else. I can't remember what he did. Right, but like I said, I love being a part of that family, but I wasn't part of that military circle, right? I really wasn't. You give me the time when you're coming home from your tour, or you're from training, or, at the very least, leave me your credit card, right? And go off. And he loved his job. He really did love his job. And we should all, have those opportunities to work in jobs that bring us joy. I know I've had a few of those jobs, very grateful that I've had some amazing jobs in my life, but I've had some jobs that were just there to put the roof over my head and to put a roof over somebody else's head. And, it is in that comparison, right? And it's in those hiccups, and it's in those kind of jobs that we get to learn what we want to do and what we don't want to do. And we learn to put up boundaries, and right. And yeah. Okay, you guys, let's just go into a car just a couple of minutes, and then we're going to call it a week. And tomorrow I'm going to have the day off, but not have the day off because I'll be editing video, and I'm going to try and get a walk in, and but I'm going to enjoy my weekend just like everybody else, right? But I'll be doing things that I enjoy, right? And I'm looking forward to re-experiencing my camping trip, especially at Silver Falls. It was absolutely amazing, and there were lots of reasons why it shouldn't have been amazing, but it was amazing, you guys. And I'll be having that video up on Wednesday. But if you want to see Blue Lake, I've already posted Blue Lake. I did that yesterday, so go ahead and check it out. The word we've got tonight is change. Oh my goodness. Change is always the result of the action. This is one of my favorites to pull. I pull this card often, often, often. I believe choices is a closer relation to one of those words that I love working with, but I know it's in our choices that we create change in our lives, because the action comes from the choices that we make, right? I can get up and I can go for a walk and go get that cup of coffee and walk down that dark street, right? And maybe the murderers and rapers, and right, those uneven sidewalks, maybe something will get me, and the change will come from that because of those choices that I made to just do that, right? Or I could choose to get in and just get cracking on getting some of that footage ready for editing. And I could do that too. But the thing is, it's going to promote change in that, right? So, if I want that cup of coffee, if I want to go out and smell fall, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I got to understand that the experience that I'm going to have is going to be totally different from the feeling of accomplishment that I have in start working on my footage or doing the dishes or the laundry or, right, going for that wonderful walk in the fall, because that's just as beneficial to me as anything out there. But it's going to be in the action that I take, right? That's going to promote that change, right? You just can't make a choice. You just can't say, "Oh, I wish I," or "I dream," right? Because and sit on your haunches and wait for that to happen. That's why I'm not a big fan of that word hope, right? Especially in the Christian religion, they use that word hope a lot. A lot of times in the genocide kind of situations that go on in the third world countries and stuff, that we have these really serious humanitarian issues, and you know we hope, right? We hope that somebody will come and save us. We hope the planes will come by and drop supplies and medical supplies and food down to us. But that doesn't always happen. And lots of times you don't have that time, right? To wait on somebody else. Especially you don't have that time to wait on something that you don't even know is even a possibility. So it's in our responsibility to take that action, no matter what it is, whether it's just writing SOS in the sand. It's just that movement. It's just making that decision to be a part of, right? Achieving whatever you need to achieve, whether it's a goal or a dream, or get yourself out of a sticky situation, right? It does. Change only comes, right? Change is always the result of an action. So if we want to see change, we're going to have to be that change. We're going to have to be that motivation, that inspiration, that physical action, that mental. Hello, Earl. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for popping in to my podcast tonight. We got this word, we got this word change. Change is always the result of an action. But I have to say, it is in that choice, right? That choice and that immediate action in that choice that we make. Because, just like I said earlier, I could have gone for a walk, or I could have done this, and right. And then as fast as it came into my mind is as fast as it left my mind. That's the idea. As soon as that thought comes to you, and this is the way that I learned, right? And it was just a miracle gift in itself in that one lesson, right? That word hope, it doesn't serve. We can't just sit on our haunches and go, please, 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 right? We have to meet it. We have to do something, right? In that promotion of getting the attention on what we need, what we want, what we dream of. Yeah, what we set our goals to. And that's a good lesson for me. I was looking at when the next RV convention was here in Winnipeg, and I don't think it's going to be until February. But in the meantime, maybe I'll watch a few videos on a few brands and take tours that way. I'm just as comfortable sitting in my chair, but sometimes it's in the feel of things. Sometimes it's the smell of things. Sometimes it's the feeling of things, right? And if that's the case, then I have to physically be in it, right? I do. Mind you, I did pretty good at picking all my camp spots. I didn't have any stinkers this year. They were all magnificent. Okay, you guys, change is always the result of an action. Okay, editing day tomorrow. We'll see what kind of change it produces and brings into my life, right? And not just to my life, because I'll be throwing it up here and maybe it'll be a part of yours too. Okay, you guys, have a great night and we'll see you Monday. If you want to come and hang out with us on Sunday night, I have an amazing crew on my Chatters Live. It's my Sunday night show. And yeah, my moderators and people who come in and follow my content there, they chat more than I do. Sometimes even I have difficulties keeping up to them. Okay, you guys, have a great night. We'll see you Monday.